Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 19 meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you're able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Dish.
Here.
Councilmember Harrison.
Here.
Councilmember Song.
Here.
Councilmember Watson.
here.
Councilmember Redina.
Here.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin.
Here.
Mayor Taylor.
Here.
Councilmember Iyer.
Here.
Councilmember Ackman.
Here.
Councilmember Briggs.
Here.
Councilmember Cornell. We have a quorum.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Iyer, seconded by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? The agenda is approved. Do we have communications today from our city administrator?
No, Mayor.
Today, we have the pleasure of an introduction from the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority. Come on down.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, good evening. My name is Jeff Pfeiffer. I am the Manager of Public Affairs and Community Engagement at The Ride. Subbing in tonight for our CEO, Matt Carpenter, who was not able to be here. I'm happy to provide a few updates from the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority. First, as many of you know, we had some exciting news happen to The Ride in relation to zero emissions buses. In April, we submitted an application to the FTA for a low-no grant application. And happy to announce in early July, we heard from the FTA that we were being awarded $25 million as part of our grant application. Very exciting for The Ride, really great thing, and want to send our thanks to Mayor Taylor, City Council, and City Administrator for all your help in our grant application. In early July, we held an event at our headquarters at 2700 South Industrial featuring the FTA Acting Administrator, Veronica Vanderpool, who handed us a very big, cartoonish check for $25 million. I'm not sure that our bank will take it, but very exciting news. I want to extend our thanks to Mayor Taylor and Councilmember Harrison for their attendance at our event. Again, very exciting. Secondly, want to announce that The Ride is proud to continue delivering on our promises made to our voters in our 2022 millage proposal. Starting next Monday, August 26th, we will be expanding our service, basically offering more service more often. With that, our weekday fixed route services are going to start a little bit earlier and go a little bit later, and we're also increasing frequency and our hours on weekend services as well. And also we'll be expanding frequency and capacity for our late night and holiday services such as Flex Ride. Wanted to provide an update. We've seen really great ridership on our Washtenaw Express route. You'll remember that was our route that launched earlier this spring. Basically a fixed route service with limited stops connecting the Blake Transit Center in Ann Arbor to the Ypsilanti Transit Center. We've seen great ridership with that, and part of that route we're continuing to build ridership and let folks know about the route. We're actually doing a giveaway currently for a few 30-day passes. More details can be found on our social media page and website. Basically just requires folks to fill out a form and upload a photo either on the bus or at the bus stop. That will go for the next few weeks, so we encourage you to let your constituents know about that. Lastly, we've been working closely with the city and other stakeholders in preparation for another football season here in Ann Arbor. We're happy to announce once again we'll be offering football ride as an option for folks to get to and from the games. So with that, I hope you guys have a great meeting.
Thank you very much. We now come to public comment reserve time. Public comment reserve time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment reserve time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting our city clerk. Speakers in all instances, both online and here in the room, will have 3 minutes in which to speak, and so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk or the time clock will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Our first speaker today is Adele Palacio.
I already not see him.
Our next speaker is Tom Stolberg. Mr. Stolberg, can you rerun your commentary? We only picked you up just now.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, you are now audible.
Thank you very much. I'd like to talk about 3 items. C1, Planning Commission. Right now, there's an issue with too many recusals, so perhaps you can select commissioners who have less likelihood of conflicts of interest and thus likely to have to recuse themselves. CA2, 415 West Washington. As a broker, I'm very familiar with what happens when brokers aren't told all the information, and then it gets late in a transaction, and there's disclosures that weren't made earlier, and I think there's been some things glossed over in the 415 West Washington description that should be highlighted to the broker so they can properly do their job. We know that it doesn't meet federal and local policies, and you've been written that in detail and at length from your floodplain manager, recently retired one at the city, that it didn't meet the letter and intent of the UDC in terms of PUDs and premium heights, et cetera, and that also it has not formally been to the HDC for approval yet, and that when the working sessions that it was at the HDC, they indicated that they would not approve what was put before them. That'd be very important for any prospective buyer to know that, thus the broker to know that, before it gets near the end of a negotiation, and then the potential buyers are disappointed to find out new information near the end of the process. I'd also like to talk about DC3, the home business expansion. I really am in favor of this, and as a matter of fact, I've got property that I'm a part owner that we've identified that we'd like to build residential over retail. We've got a development partner that's already been shown this property and has shown interest in it. But we were expecting to wait for the comprehensive plan revision process to be done and then likely have this be something that we would be able to do. I'd like to go through that process and not jump that process, which this resolution seems to do. The comprehensive plan revision process is where the community expresses their desires and has that communication with the city, the Planning Commission, City Council, and collectively we come up with the vision and revise the comprehensive plan and then revise our zoning code after that, because the zoning code is the codification of the comprehensive plan into enforceable legal language. So we're skipping a step here, and I really want to see this happen, but I really want us to do it in the right way. So let's not skip this step. That's very important, that the public is properly engaged in the process as the law defines how it's supposed to be done, and this seems to be a workaround for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kathy Griswold.
Good evening. First, I'd like to address CA12, which is to replace 2 officer positions with a lieutenant position. I think this is an excellent idea. This shows excellent management skills, creative thinking, and I am told that the chief has a long-term plan that's also going to address the long-term financial impact, because of course the lieutenant's going to retire sooner than 2 officers would. Anyway, I'll leave that up to the chief. Second, I'd like to recommend that the mayor form a blue ribbon panel with the explicit goal of working on a plan to avoid a city income tax. I've mentioned this many times. I've been on the school board, I've been in other organizations and looked at the financials, and when you're spending more money than you're taking in, it's inevitable that you're going to have a financial issue. So let's get a blue ribbon committee of experts who can provide some input on this. And one of the reasons I was thinking about this is because we all know that the Ann Arbor Public Schools had a financial crisis. When I looked at the school board candidates who were running, the majority had a management or financial background and would bring expertise. I think they came forward because of the crisis. So rather than wait until the city has a crisis, let's be proactive and let's bring that skill set in now. We did that in the Ann Arbor Public Schools when we were building Skyline. It was a year behind schedule, as well as $10 million over budget. We brought in a blue ribbon panel. We were able to resolve those issues and went on to go out for a second public bond, and we're now taking advantage of that. Two quick things. One is I talked to the city administrator, and I will bring him an enlarged map that clearly shows the public walkways that are owned by the city in the King School area. But more importantly, we have crosswalks and sidewalks throughout the city that are dangerous due to overgrown vegetation. I've talked to some of the staff. They don't even have the tools that are needed to perform some of the corner clearance. Lastly, we lost another community member over the weekend. And we know what happened and we know what she did. But Vision Zero calls for designing intersections and designing crosswalks so that more than one problem has to occur. That didn't happen. In that area, we have poor lighting, no sidewalks. It's a narrow dirt road with street parking. There are a lot of issues. Let's spend our money on fixing our infrastructure rather than consultants. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Henry Herskovitz.
Good evening. I'd like to continue our discussion on the differences between fumigation gas chambers and the alleged homicidal gas chambers our students are being forced to learn about. My source, again, is Nicholas Calderstrom's Breaking the Spell: The Holocaust, Myth and Reality, and I offer to purchase a copy of this book to each city councilman here, although I won't purchase it through Amazon because it's been figuratively burned. Council's reactions to my talks are not unique. A friend claimed she stood in a homicidal gas chamber, and when I informed her that she stood in a post-war reconstruction of a homicidal gas chamber, she said, "This conversation is over." They say you can't argue somebody out of a position they didn't argue themselves into, and this is a prime example of that phenomenon. The company that built the fumigation chambers was called Degesh, and they were very proud of their product because it efficiently saved lives, as was its purpose. The chambers featured a remotely controlled can opener that opened cans of Zyklon B so that the operator wouldn't have to wear a gas mask. The gas pellets were then dumped down a short chute into a waiting basket. Then the heaters were turned on because hydrogen cyanide pellets are inert below its boiling point, which is about 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Then the fans came on to evenly distribute the gas so that it would reach the lice hiding in the clothing and bedding which were hung in the room. After 1 to 2 hours, the lethal gas was force-vented up a pipe and into the atmosphere. Then the chamber was ventilated with fresh air for about 15 minutes, after which it was safe to open. The clothing and bedding were hung outdoors to aerate, then returned to the camp inmates bug-free. The rooms of the alleged homicidal gas chambers have no such devices present. no induction chutes, no heaters, fans, nor exhaust piping. Casual observation supports revisionist claims that the rooms offered to the public in Germany and Poland are not and could not be the homicidal gas chambers they claim to be. My hope is that our students are being presented with facts like the ones I bring to council tonight so that they can draw their own conclusions. Thank you.
Our next speaker is McKee.
Good evening, Ralph McKee, Fifth Ward. I also wanted to just express sadness and dismay at the recent pedestrian death on Ravenwood. It's difficult to get into the topic that I'm into, given what happened there. But I'm here to express disappointment in the decision-making process, Ray Street Lighting. I share appreciation for staff getting a major grant for a big improvement, and I commend the council members who asked good questions. But you allowed staff to snow you, Ray, further cost savings, the staff burden, ignoring the national standards, and failing to provide any basis for overriding them. The contrast between the July and August meetings is astonishing. In July, everyone advocated 29-watt bulbs in neighborhoods for many good reasons. You directed staff to find a way to do it. Instead, they fed you bad info, which you didn't question. That's an oversight failure. Let's talk cost savings. It's simple. Google or call MPSC and search DTE streetlight charges, and there's a monthly average charge chart. Do the math. It took us an hour. Annual savings for 2,000 bulbs was $65,000, $650,000 over 10 years. How could the staff charged with getting the best deal not know how DTE charges? After all, staff had estimated $300K for the 58-watt plan. That was based on lower wattage. But staff said in July, we don't know. Wrong. Obviously, other staffers did. We have to ask DTE. Wrong. And then said nothing 3 weeks until the end of the August meeting, saying DTE told us further savings were negligible. Wrong again. You didn't question it, and you left big energy savings on the table too, 170 kilowatt hours per year, even running at 48 watts. The inventory, 1.5 FTEs to manage one item, is absurd. Right now, staff manages 8 DT bulbs types plus other city ones. Going forward, it'll be 6 or 7. Yes, to implement, we'll need extra help, but with bulbs guaranteed for 10 years, years 2 to 10 will require little or no help. DT requires a 10% minimum, so for 2,000 bulbs, you always have 200. That's more than you ever need, even with lightning and car wrecks. You just replenish up to the minimum. That's an absolute no-brainer. Staff didn't bring up safety in a real way till August. They provided no basis to override the standards and public input, which staff initially misrepresented. Staff didn't identify who raised concerns, so there's no way of knowing their credentials. The chart was misleading. You say the 48-watt switch is a win. It's a third of a loaf. No one even mentioned a better solution, 39 watts, which would have been 2/3 of the loaf. Supporting staff is a good idea. Great. Coddling is not. You're a CEO and a board charged with oversight. Please do your job. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Evan Suliotis.
For decades, I've worked behind the scenes on financial regulatory issues with British members of Parliament as a whistleblower, writing technical communications and explaining shady market practices to politicians and regulators. I say behind the scenes because I don't relish public speaking, but I've been driven to speak to council and to protest in front of City Hall in defense of my family. To continue my presentation of 2 sessions ago, who else benefits from repeated economic assaults against my family by rogue city officials? The financial industry's foreign exchange market is by far the largest beneficiary of my being too tied up fighting for economic survival to do anything else. On behalf of former UK Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, John McDonnell, I surely ticked off some in the financial industry back in October 2019 when I interviewed the current Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, then CEO of the Financial Conduct Authority, regarding the FCA's failure to mandate timestamps for customer foreign exchange trades. The FCA is the British version of our Securities and Exchange Commission. Timestamps create an audit trail. making it risky to pilfer pension fund money by mispricing currency trades, as was the case with Bank of New York Mellon and its $714 million federal currency fraud settlement. Without mandated timestamps, I wouldn't be surprised if theft from pension and other funds exceeds $1 billion annually. Michigan pensions are exposed to such theft too. Bitter irony that my family's been both attacked and left unprotected by my hometown officials whose pensions I've acted to protect while we have no pensions of our own. More irritating to global rogues is what I did in our 2015 meeting at the Bank of England, when then Deputy Governor for Markets, Manoush Shafiq, said that she'd not received any complaints from market participants regarding the lack of a timestamp mandate. I then had the poor form to raise my hand and say, I'm complaining, and I was a London-based fund manager. Following my complaint, several recommendations for timestamps appeared in the UK Fair and Effective Markets Review, as well as a recommendation in the FX Global Code, which purports to protect investors from unscrupulous financiers. In spite of all this, to my knowledge, no enforceable mandate was implemented to protect consumers. Such regulatory failures are an indication of the morally corrupting power of the financial industry. Another term for this is corporate capture, meaning regulators captured by corporate interests. Clearly a problem in Michigan too. To hear it from a more famous source, watch Inside Job, a movie narrated by Matt Damon on the architecture of the Great Recession. I'm Evan from Ward 5, and I say publish that damn ombudsperson report.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Adam Goodman.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. This is Adam Goodman. I'm speaking to you from the 5th Ward. At the last meeting, we talked a little bit about the MDOT trunk lines, but tonight I want to address the vast majority of roads in our city that are already under city jurisdiction. It was almost 10 years ago that we set our Vision Zero goal to eliminate fatal and serious injury crashes by 2025. And at this point, it is clear that we will fail to meet this goal. You might have heard we held a protest outside City Hall last month because of this, and I think you can expect there will be more. Now, to be fair, Ann Arbor has done some good things. The rate of severe pedestrian and bike crashes has risen dramatically across the U.S., while in the city it's merely remained basically flat. That's sort of a positive sign. We're doing less badly than most, but it's also not enough, not even close. So I think it's worth asking, what have we actually done with the last almost 10 years? Well, one thing we've done, we've made a lot of plans. So starting with 2015, we had the Pedestrian Safety Task Force report, and that led us to set this Vision Zero target. In 2017, we had another resolution reaffirming Vision Zero. In 2018, we kicked off a new comprehensive transportation plan. That took until 2021 when that plan was finalized. That's already 6 years into our goal, right? Time to start implementing? Well, no, then we had to set up a Vision Zero implementation planning effort. That took another 2 years. Now, last month, we approved another contract, which seems to be about, developing more plans on how to implement our implementation plan. Oh, and also we did this lower town mobility study, and we're doing this downtown circulation thing. So, look, my question is, most of these plans look great, but when do we get to stop planning and start doing? Because it sure seems like we've spent the last 10 years in an endless cycle of plans and more plans, cost probably millions of dollars, with not a lot of on-the-ground improvements to actually show for it. Now, sure, yes, we need to do planning for big capital projects, but that's why our comprehensive transportation plan that I mentioned says as one of its key recommendations that we should establish a quick build program. Quick build is an approach that's supposed to help cities break out of this endless planning cycle where we can use temporary and inexpensive materials to rapidly try out new configurations in the real world, evaluate them, and tweak them as needed. Councilmember Briggs, to your credit, you tried to get the ball rolling with a budget amendment several years ago, but our approach to quick build seems to actually have ended up stuck in the same mentality that we have to exhaustively plan everything for years before actually doing a tiny bit of work. And this is just for some paint and plastic delineator. And we also seem to have no mechanism to evaluate, tweak, and maintain this stuff on an ongoing basis. If we did, maybe we wouldn't need such exhaustive plans. And then last month, at a council meeting, we saw that we've gotten so bogged down with this planning crap that we missed an entire year. We're not doing any quick build road safety improvements in 2024 at all. folks, this is not how this is supposed to work. So again, when do we stop planning and start doing? And when are we going to actually get serious about Vision Zero? We have the plans. We know what needs to be done. Let's do it.
Thank you. Are there communications today from council? Councilmember Bush.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to, first of all, express my displeasure at having been treated to a detailed description, full of some unfactual information, but also full of really, nauseating details when you imagine what was really happening in those chambers. And I really wish that public commenting would stop. It's not doing any good for anyone. However, in a more hopeful vein, I'd like to say that we are going to have a visit from our sister city, members of our sister city, Tübingen. Do you want to talk? Oh, wait. No. Okay. Tübingen, Germany. And they, the Lord Mayor, which is what he is called there, sorry, Mayor Taylor.
What are you going to do?
That title. He will be speaking to what we can learn from Ann Arbor's sister city about climate change. And indeed, we have a lot, and it's really fun. And Lord Mayor Palmer will be here at the Ann Arbor District Library Wednesday, September 18th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. Please note that on your calendar and come. It will be an interactive session, so that's even more fun. And then please save the date. That same week, Friday night, September 20th, for the A20 Green Fair in downtown Ann Arbor. There are so many people who are working to make our transition to sustainability happen, and the Green Fair features people you can learn from and things you can eat. So come.
Councilmember Song. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Ackman.
Sorry for the confusion. Here's a shocking fact. Most children in the U.S. who die from an accidental shooting are playing around with guns at home or mistaking them for toys. These are incidents that are 100% preventable, and a key prevention tool is locking your gun. A couple of months ago, a constituent approached me to ask if the city could offer gun locks in vending machines, much like we do for Narcan and other public health supplies. That began a conversation with Chief Anderson and his team about how we could offer free gun locks on a no questions asked basis. And I'm happy to report that we now have an expanded free gun lock program. They are now available at 3 Ann Arbor District Library branches, downtown, Westgate, and Mallett's Creek. They're available to anyone, no questions asked. They don't require any interaction with staff. And they're also in a public space where other information and harm reduction items are available. These are also available at Supportive Connections office in LARCOM, this building, and 24/7 at the AAPD front desk, located on the second floor of the Justice Center, and also no questions asked. So I want to thank Sonia Lewis, who brought this idea to me, Chief Anderson, and the AAPD, and the partnership of the Ann Arbor District Library on working together to make this a reality. Please be a responsible gun owner and lock up your firearm.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, thanks. So for the last couple of meetings, we've had a former council member who's come and warned that maybe a tax increase might be something that's heading our way. And I'd been shaking my head and thinking, no, this isn't likely. But I'm beginning to be concerned that maybe that also is a possibility. Unfortunately, there is a proposal that voters are going to be looking at in November, Proposal D, that is going to be suggesting a 900% match on small donations, up to $40,000 for a council member, $90,000 for mayoral candidates. And the reality is that we don't have the funds to be able to actually pay for money for politicians without cutting services or creating a tax increase. Mayor Taylor, I do think that we probably need to start discussing, what are we going to have to do to be able to address this if this passes.
Further communication from council. Councilmember Song.
Speaking of ballot initiatives, if we are concerned about tax capture, we could always do a Headley override. And Ferndale actually has this on their ballot this November. But instead, we have two ballot initiatives that have nothing to do with the quality of life or well-being for our residents. Instead, it's an exercise in understanding what Ann Arbor's values are. So if we are to have a serious discussion on taxes here in Ann Arbor, I hope we have a better understanding of Headley, the Headley Amendment, and Prop A, the impact on underfunding municipal government, and maybe taking a look at MML and their position statement. There's also actually a memo that John Fournier had written to council back in the last, I think in 21, which is really useful too in understanding this. So we've done our homework.
Councilmember Watson.
Those who tuned in last month heard me give this announcement, but since the virtual office hours are coming up this week, I'll mention again the Nixon Corridor Improvement Project. There is an update on the webpage at a2gov.org/Nixon, and there's a video there and information about the proposed road design. But if you'd like to hear more, and if you have questions for staff on this, there are virtual office hours this Wednesday, August 21st, from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m., and then again this Thursday, August 22nd, from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Staff asks if you could please watch the video posted before you come to those sessions, just so you have an overview of the design. And then there is another virtual session that will kind of walk through that video Wednesday, September 18th, 7 to 8:30. So you can run over after listening to the mayor, to the Lord Mayor speak at the library. And the Zoom links for these projects will be available the day of the event. Once again, that's a2gov.org/Nixon. Thank you.
Further communication from council. We have before us the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Medina, second by Councilmember Harrison. Discussion of the consent agenda. Councilmember Briggs.
I was just hoping that staff might be able to just answer a couple of questions. Sorry, I know I need to pull it. How do I do this? The one related to the RFP for 415. CA2.
CA2.
Good, I would like to pull CA2.
Mr. Delacourt available? Shall we pull it? It's pulled. Further discussion on the consent agenda. For my part, I just want to uplift CA15, which is a resolution to appropriate Inflation Reduction Act grant funds from the USDA Forest Service as a subaward through various projects. This is yet another example of the Biden-Harris Inflation Reduction Act accruing to the benefit of the people of Ann Arbor. We have, of course, ourselves as a municipal organization purchased millions of dollars of solar panels and accrued other energy-related benefits as a result of the Inflation Reduction Act. Here, we as a municipal organization are going to be receiving $1 million to support our urban forestry efforts, which are crucial to quality of life, health, and pollution fighting here within the city. And so I just want to express gratitude to staff for getting the grant, and to the administration, of course, for its availability. Further discussion of the consent agenda. All in favor of the consent agenda with the exception of CA2, please say aye. Opposed? The consent agenda, with the exception of CA2, is approved. 10 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement with respect to CA7, CA9, CA11, CA15. CA2, resolution to direct the city administrator to contract for real estate brokerage or seller's agent services for the sale of 415 West Washington, moved by Councilmember Briggs, seconded by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion, please, of CA2. Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, I was hoping that Mr. Delacourt might be able to respond to just a couple of questions. I think he's on, so I will start to pose the questions. Basically, this was answered during agenda response questions, but I know that not everybody gets a chance to read those from the public before our meetings. I was just hoping that he could speak on sort of the benefit of using a seller's agent, and then also discuss sort of speak to the fact that this is a pre-entitled project and all of the elements that have already been vetted and approved by council and that will be shared with the seller's agent as we move forward.
Mr. Delacourt?
Can you guys hear me?
Now we can.
Oh, okay, good. I don't know why, and I can't see why my camera is not working. So I apologize for that. But I'm certainly here and able to answer any of those questions. And first, I believe the question was the benefit of a seller's agent and broker, or just a seller's agent in comparison to a broker, just for clarification.
I was more thinking of that, the seller's agent or broker, basically that as opposed to an RFP. That was one of the questions that was posed in the agenda response. I was hoping you could speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. For us, I mean, it's both processes solicit competitive offers for the property. An RFP process is a point in time type process where you get a fixed set of offers and then compare those, select a winning or preferred bidder, and then begin negotiations with that preferred bidder specifically. That narrows those options to that one development group specifically. And if it's not, a purchase agreement is not successful, oftentimes you have to move backwards in the process, or worst case scenario, start over. Use of a seller's agent or a broker allows those negotiations to go on continuously until and often allow negotiations with more than one development group at a time, soliciting or negotiating for the best offer possible for the site. In this instance, with an entitled site, we think that is the best process to move forward. Certainly, there are different processes that apply to different projects, but certainly in this instance, this is the one staff is recommending. I believe the other question was the site being entitled. As we've discussed in previous instances, this site, the city, along with the DDA and other entities, acted as the developer for the entitlement process, which is the approval of the zoning. And in this instance, we've also done a significant amount of work with the community engagement process up front that I think is well documented. We have also done a significant amount of work when it's related to the brownfield remediation. In fact, developing a remediation plan that is available for the developer and has been reviewed by the city's consultants. So in this instance, the city, without the benefit or detriment, depending on your point of view, of a development team, went through the process of entitling the site based on that community engagement and evaluating the series of trade-offs that are well documented with the site, and approved the PUD for the site that is part of the package that will be advertised for the sale of the property. We believe that is another distinction for this site, dissimilar to a lot of sites that the city may decide to dispose of, and one that makes it unique in that marketing process. So I think I'll stop there and listen in case there's any additional questions.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. We now come to a set of public hearings. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and the community about the specific subject matter of the public hearing. Speakers do not need to have signed up in advance in order to speak at a public hearing, but their speech must relate to the subject matter of the public hearing. That is to say, the specific item on the agenda to which the public hearing relates. Speakers, both in-house and online, will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk or the time clock will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Public hearing number 1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55, zoning, rezoning of 27.65 acres from R4A multifamily district to R4D multifamily district with the condition that the maximum height is 75 feet. Owl Creek Phase 2 rezoning, 3380 Nixon Road. Is there anyone in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing? To speak, you just come on up. All good, you're welcome.
My name is Hartman. I live in the Owl Creek Apartments where the proposed rezoning is happening. I was just curious, looking at the documents, they've proposed about a 7-meter variance on the rear setback limits. Are there any impacts that would happen to the Oakwoods nature area there? I know there's wetland there, and I'm not sure if they're going to be building on that variance or if they just need extra space around where the building would be. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearings are not typically question-answer sessions, but we, oh no, you are well within your right to have posed the question. I'm just explaining why there's no immediate answer. But I hope someone will have noted it. Thank you. Is there anyone else in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. Ken Garber, Second Ward. Very nice to be with you here tonight. Maybe Mr. Moore, who just walked in, can answer the question about the impact of the setback variance on the wetland. This is a rezoning from R4A to R4D, not just for the proposed new construction, but for the entire 28-acre site, which includes 3 existing 3-story apartment buildings with a clubhouse. One could make a reasonable case against this rezoning. The wetland there is one of the largest and most important in the city, and it connects underground to other wetlands further south. So higher density right at the edge of this wetland, variance or no variance, could harm water quality and species diversity. And R4D triples the building height limit to 120 feet. On the other hand, there is a wetland monitoring plan, and it's in the development agreement. And the developer has voluntarily agreed to a zoning condition that limits building height to 75 feet. And the rezoning enables a new 5-story, 131-unit apartment building, which will use parking that already exists but isn't currently used. We need the housing. And as Councilmember Dish pointed out last month, this is an infill project. Finally, this will be an all-electric building, at least mostly. I'll say more about that at the site plan public hearing. So personally, taking everything into account, I support this rezoning to R4D. So I'm sure you'll approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I see no one with their hand raised.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 2. Resolution to approve the 3380 Nixon Road, Owl Creek Phase 2 Site Plan and Development Agreement. Is there anyone in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. I guess it's just me this time. Ken Garber again. As I just mentioned, this is a good project. Electric building with a good heating system. We've approved some all-electric buildings that employ that use VTACs, or vertical terminal air conditioners, which are basically closet heat pumps for individual units. Very inefficient. Owl Creek, to its credit, will be using a centralized rooftop condenser unit and will pump hot refrigerant to heat exchangers in each unit, which is a much more efficient setup. The developer, Adam Blesnak, voluntarily agreed to make electrification a condition for site plan approval. That's in paragraph 18 of the development agreement. This is a good precedent, something we should always ask for. But there is a problem here that I see. Planning Commission required electrification and specified no gas hookup, but the development agreement on your table tonight adds, quote, with the exception of a connection to natural gas to be used only for the use of an emergency backup electric generator, end quote. This begs explanation. At Planning Commission, Mr. Blesnak agreed to language that would prevent any future gas connection. He said, and I quote, there would be no reason to have a connection to gas, end quote. The 820 plan is very explicit about this, and OSI always asks developers not to connect to gas. Most do, unfortunately. Here we have a developer happy to comply. Mr. Blesnak pointed out that the adjacent clubhouse will have a gas generator and that its kitchen, bathrooms, and showers will be available to residents during outages. So my question tonight is, why add the language about a gas connection to the development agreement? Given that Mr. Blesnak agreed to not ask for this. And this was also Planning Commission's explicit desire. So we should know the reason. And maybe Mr. Moore can supply it also. Otherwise, please remove that language tonight before approving the development agreement. This might seem like a small concern, but we should not deviate from 820 and Planning Commission's desires without a compelling reason. Every bit of CO2 we keep out of the atmosphere matters, given that it stays up there for centuries, heating the planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I see no one with their hand raised.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. We have before us the regular session meeting minutes of August 8, 2024. May I have a motion, please, to approve these minutes? Moved by Councilmember Watson, seconded by Councilmember Harrison. Discussion of the minutes. All in favor? Opposed? The minutes are approved. B1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55, zoning rezoning of 27.65 acres from R4A multifamily district to R4D multifamily district with the condition that the maximum height is 75 feet. Owl Creek Phase 2 rezoning 3380 Nixon Road. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Watson. Discussion, please, of B1. Councilmember Dish.
I am very happy to discuss this project, which, as a public commenter already mentioned, is a housing infill project that makes use of the existing infrastructure to provide additional housing units in an efficient way. We will speak more about the site plan in a moment, but this rezoning will allow us to consider a site plan that will add a 131-unit apartment building next to an existing parking lot. This rezoning will allow the construction, will allow us to consider the construction of the Owl Creek Phase 2 site plan. Now, this has already been mentioned, but I will say it again. I want you to note that the current maximum height of the buildings on site is 38.7 feet, and the proposed height of the new building is about 60 feet, which is to say roughly 5 stories tall, or 5 stories tall, not roughly. The condition caps the height of the building at 75 feet in deference to concerns by the neighbors, because the R4D zoning allows height up to 120 feet. The building proposed on the site plan that we will consider later in this meeting will not be 75 feet tall. We've had a lot of correspondence concerned about a 75-foot tall building because they're misunderstanding. They reasonably interpreted the agreement to 75 feet to tell us what the building height is, but that's not it. So this project is consistent with the overall goals of the comp plan, and it's compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, which is also multifamily housing. There is a variance that allows the new building to be constructed over an existing 12-space parking lot without moving or reducing the size of that parking lot. The variance does not grant permission to do anything to the Oakwood natural area, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come to the site plan. The differences between R4D and R4A is that we're moving from a max of 20 dwelling units per acre to 25 dwelling units per acre. Again, an infill project is a typically gradual increase of density that is efficient because it uses existing infrastructure. So that's nice, and I think that's all I will tell you now.
Further discussion of B1? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DS1, resolution to approve the 3380 Nixon Road, Owl Creek Phase 2 Site Plan and Development Agreement, moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Watson. Discussion, please, of DS1.
Yes,
Councilmember
thank
Dish.
you. I'm sorry, I didn't wait for you to call on me.
All good.
How presumptuous. So, as we have said, there are currently three-story apartment buildings on this property, and adding this building will bring the site total to 395 units. These will be in proximity to services and jobs, so it's a terrific increase in housing there. The development agreement does provide full electrification for all project heating, cooling, and appliances, with the exception of the natural gas for emergency backup. I would like to use a little bit of my time, because I can always come back, to ask either Mr. Leonard or Ms. Thatcher to explain why that provision was added. And I think we have, yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is Brett Leonard, the planning manager. So that is often an exception that we provide in development agreements when we're talking about electrification. I honestly don't know if there's been any specific conversations with the petitioner. That is typical language that we've included in other development agreements to provide that continuous service when a building is otherwise all electric. If the petitioner is interested in it, we could certainly make the change, but maintaining it obviously would provide, just as described, continuous service to that building in the event of any power outage.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I want to speak to two more things if I have time, and if I don't, I'll come back. And one is that the electrification is in the development agreement. It is not attached to the zoning. That means that if it is for this site plan only. So if this plan does not go through, the electrification will not be a requirement attached to this parcel in any way. And that is unfortunate, but you don't want to attach things to zoning that don't have to do with zoning. And electrification is not a feature of zoning. Land use and area height and placement are. And so we have put things where they belong, and that isn't a rock-solid guarantee, but that's the environment in which we live. So if I'm running out, I'll just come back about
30 seconds.
Oh, cool. All right. So yes, this site abuts Oakwood's nature area, and there is a population of Butler's garter snakes, which are a state species of special concern. If you want to go visit them, you now know where you can find them. The petitioner has, or the developer has, guaranteed that this area will be protected with silt fencing and disturbed as little as possible during construction. There is no plans to do any construction on the area of the site that directly abuts the nature area, just to answer the concerns that were raised by an audience member.
Councilmember Watson.
So as usual, Councilmember Dish covers almost every question you could have. So I'm just happy to say I'm supportive of this project because it's infill development that provides much needed rental units in Ward 2 on a site that was already prepared for housing. In addition to the all-electric units, there's EV parking spaces, 10 installed and 86 capable, and all around this project helps meet our city's sustainability goals. In addition, there's also there's a $81,875 parks contribution, so we appreciate that. And one point I wanted to mention is some neighbors have been a little bit concerned that the nearest bus stop is half a mile away, but we did, Councilmember Dish and I ran that question down with staff, and because there aren't any changes to site circulation proposed as part of this project, and a new bus stop would be kind of a long-term plan and a long-term question to be considered with AAATA regarding financing and a number of issues, some of which are inherent in our comprehensive plan. We don't think it's exactly fair to ask for a new bus stop there, and it's not really within our power. So we just want to make sure we discuss that issue. Yep, I think that's all. But thanks.
Councilmember Briggs.
Thank you. It sounds like this is a great project. Definitely in support of it. I just wanted to follow up just a teeny bit more on a question that was raised by Mr. Garber around the exception for natural gas in the case of emergency backup. It sounds like that was something that the developer did not request, and Planning Commission didn't want, and we just kind of put it in because it's our boilerplate language of sorts. And so I'm just curious if there's a way to ask at this moment in time if that would be, if that is indeed language that is not of, if it would be problematic to remove that language for some reason. I don't know if that's appropriate, Mayor Taylor, to pose that question at this moment or not.
With council's pleasure, and Mr. Moore's acquiescence.
If that would remove the only option in our state building code that we would be left with is a diesel generator, still burning carbon, trucking diesel across the road network. So the state building code gives us those two choices, natural gas or diesel. We felt that the natural gas was the cleaner option.
Okay. So it sounds like there was an anticipation that that language was actually going to perhaps be in there when that commitment was made. Okay.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. C1, an ordinance to amend section 1175 through 1185 of chapter 8, Organization of Board and Commissions of Title I, Administration of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Ackman. Discussion, please, of C1. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you, Mayor. So this ordinance change would do two broad things. One is to make some terminological changes for gender neutrality and to use the term comprehensive plan in place of any other terminology used to refer to the comprehensive plan. The probably more consequential change is to change the minimum standard, that is number of votes that are required to send something forward from the City Planning Commission to City Council with as an approval by the Planning Commission. So currently that minimum standard is 6 affirmative votes. Sometimes we've seen a unanimous yes vote from Planning Commission that fell short of that 6-vote threshold, and it has to be brought forward as a technical fail, which is strange. And so why does that happen? That happens because the Planning Commission is comprised of many land use professionals. They are valued members of the Planning Commission, and they occasionally appropriately recuse themselves from discussion and deliberation. And moreover, the Planning Commission is comprised mostly of volunteers, many of whom have families with children or other events in their lives or jobs, and sometimes they are absent. So if you put those two things together, we often are in a situation where we may fall short of the 6 affirmative vote threshold, even though we all unanimously agree that something is a good ordinance or a good zoning change. And so for that reason, CPC recommends modification to this section to reduce the standard from 6 to 5 affirmative votes. And I support this change, and I hope that you will too when it comes back to us for second reading, and I hope that you will send it along to second reading too.
Further discussion? For my part, I'm of course going to be voting in support of these things, and just want to add a little bit of boost to the concepts of recusals. The idea that we have the idea that there are opportunities for planning commissioners to recuse themselves, opportunities that they avail themselves of, that is a negative. It mystifies me. We have design professionals who are doing work in our community, and we have people who are declining to vote on matters that pertain to their professional operations. This is how local government should work. The notion that you want to find people who have nothing to do with local land use questions. I don't truck with that. I think this is a good thing, and shows a planning commission filled with professionals of engagement, experience, and wisdom. Further discussion. Councilmember Hackman.
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. I think I hear it being whispered in my ear, but how many members of Planning Commission are there? And so is this a majority still? If someone could respond to that, I'd appreciate it.
There are 9 members on the Planning Commission, so this would still be a majority.
Thank you.
So we are essentially removing the supermajority obligation. Further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? It is approved. C2, an ordinance to amend sections 5.20.3 of Chapter 55, Unified Development Code of Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, vehicular use area buffers. Moved by Council Member Redina, second by Councilmember Ghazi Edwin. Discussion, please, of C2. Councilmember Dish.
My apologies, colleagues. This change is purely corrective. There is no change to the requirements to buffer vehicular use areas, which continue to require screening from right-of-way, landscaping with interior landscape islands, and buffers adjacent to parks and residentially zoned parcels. So all of that remains in place whenever there's a vehicular use that butts up against those things. These changes were made, or rather, there were changes made only to the presentation of this information in the UDC. These changes were inadvertently omitted when the UDC was updated to reflect the substantive changes to the conflicting use barrier requirements that Council approved on February 20th, 2024. We've already made the substantive changes here. These are purely changes in presentation in the UDC to something else, which is vehicular use buffering. And if I mangled that in any way, Mr. Leonard, please feel free to jump in and clarify.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC1, resolution in support of Michigan's Drive Safe bills, moved by Councilmember Bierig, second by Councilmember Ackman. Discussion, please, of DC1. Councilmember Ackman.
Thank you, Mayor. So the Michigan legislature has introduced a set of House bills that are collectively known as Drive Safe. That stands for Safety, Access, Freedom, and Economy. And the purpose of these bills is to restore Michigan's pre-2008 practice of allowing residents to obtain a Michigan driver's license and state ID card, regardless of their ability to demonstrate U.S. citizenship or immigration status. It's in our collective interest that all Michigan drivers are trained, screened, tested, made familiar with Michigan driving regulations, and also have access to purchase auto insurance. And in fact, the Transportation Commission passed a resolution in support of this a couple of years ago, and it seems like it got a little bit lost in the shuffle. So this resolution urges the Michigan legislature to pass Drive Safe. Michigan, if it passed this, would be joining 19 states and the District of Columbia that have already enacted laws to allow undocumented residents and others who cannot demonstrate their lawful presence to obtain driver's licenses. And I guess In closing, law enforcement and other states have voiced their support for this because it allows them to focus on other important public safety issues. Far less people are found guilty of illegally driving. There's dramatic reductions in uninsured drivers and a reduction in hit and run crashes. In closing, I'd like to thank Molly Kleinman, former Transportation Commissioner, for reigniting this issue, and the advocates at We the People Michigan who helped craft this resolution. I hope you'll join me in supporting this resolution to call on the Michigan legislature to pass this set of bills.
Further discussion? Councilor Song.
So these bills were introduced back in 2021 with State Senator Stephanie Chang, Senator Brinks, Representative Krupa, Representative Hood. And I'm really glad that you've brought this up as a reminder, given that while we have a majority in the legislature, there should be movement on this. We're only 3 years after this was first introduced. And if folks are unfamiliar with this issue, it was actually not a requirement, citizenship was not a requirement for a license, a state ID. And then in December 2007, Attorney General Mike Cox issued a new opinion that reversed that finding. So our state was pretty okay with having folks, our residents, have driver's licenses until then. And now we have an opportunity to reverse that. So thank you for reminding us that we can do good things with a majority.
Councilmember Gaziano.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. And I also just want to express thanks to my council colleagues. This is such an important issue. And I wanted to also, give appreciation to the Drive Michigan Forward Coalition, which is made up of Michigan United and Michigan Immigration Rights Coalition and We the People. I know that they've been spearheading this for some time. So yeah, it's a really important thing. And I also think that we did something really great when we passed our ban on discriminating against IDs. And specifically it was county issue IDs. And even though, that doesn't give you the ability to drive, it did allow immigrants, regardless of status, to gain things like access to food voucher programs or participating in our child's school. So we're on the right track, and I'm glad that we are supporting this.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC2, Resolution for Community Events Fund Disbursements from the fiscal year 2025 budget. Moved by Councilmember Adina, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of DC2. Councilmember Adina.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I'd like to always give this a little bit of a shout out because it's one of those amazing things that we get to do every year where we use a portion of our budget to help cover some of the costs that would normally be incurred for a number of really beloved community events that happen throughout the year. Obviously, there are costs associated with running those events. Some of those are city costs as you are shutting down streets and doing trash and things like that. And this $94,000 that we budget every year gets to go back into the community organizations, the nonprofits that are hosting all of these events to help to support their work. And so one of the things that I will point out is obviously as you're looking through the list, the awkward timing of this means a lot of these events have already happened this year, so they are coming as reimbursements because it is within our fiscal year, but there are a number of them still to come. And so the fact that the city of Ann Arbor gets to partner and sponsor some of these events by contributing is, I think, a great thing. So I look forward to everyone's support.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC3, resolution to consider allowing more flexibility for home occupations in residential neighborhoods. Moved by Councilmember Song, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of DC3. Councilmember Song.
This resolution came about from a series of conversations I've had with residents across the city and in my work supporting service agencies. There's a real struggle for local home businesses to capture more business, given how limited our home occupancy ordinances are. So I had reached out to staff, and we had some really good discussions, trying to take a look at what's being done in Raleigh, New Orleans, Portland. And the idea was, how can we encourage more innovation and entrepreneurs who are doing small home businesses but don't have the access to capital for commercial kitchens, commercial rent. So I was really taken by the opportunity to support micro enterprises. And given that we've dedicated resources and time for economic development here, it seemed like we were on this path to understanding what that possibility might look like with, we've got a lot of immigrant BIPOC folks who are making food at home and selling it, but without a real presence, with only one employee, which is themselves. So I really appreciate the support from my colleagues. I think there was one really excellent point, which is that community engagement with our comprehensive plan is wrapping up, and the timing of this resolution doesn't really match with what could potentially come out of community conversations. So we have a couple amendments we'd like to work on, and so I'd like to move to postpone this vote until the September meeting so that we can work on those amendments.
First meeting in September, that is?
Yes.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Watson. Discussion of the postponement? Councilmember Briggs.
I just wanted to thank Councilmember Song for bringing this forward. I think this is a great resolution. I guess, and we can speak more to that, the substance of it at the next meeting. Just procedurally, I just wanted to double check. Would it be better to provide some of those amendments now so that then there's opportunity to consider them over the course of in between periods of time, or do you want to just,
I'd rather just reintroduce it, and then with the amendments.
Sounds great.
Further discussion of the postponement? All in favor? All opposed? It is postponed. Do we have the pleasure of a closed session today?
We do not.
We have before us the clerk's report of communications. I assume there are petitions and referrals somewhere in here. May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report, moved by Councilmember Ghazi Edmond, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion of the clerk's report. All in favor? Oh, opposed? It is approved. I saw the hands, and I thought for some reason that people all wanted to speak about the clerk's report at once, and it was madness. Yes, you did. Do we have the pleasure of communication today from our city attorney?
We do not.
In the absence of public comment overflow, may I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Harrison, second by Councilmember Adina. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. 8:15.